Right, what is up my guys and girls? Welcome back to the channel. Before we start the video, make sure you are subscribed and you like the video. And guess what guys? Comment below if you want me to answer your question in the next Q&A. And before I actually do that, you have to be a subscriber. So today I have 35 questions to actually go over, and guess what? I am going to do every single one of them with a relatively detailed answer. So strap in and stay tuned for today's YouTube Q&A. Question 1 from Faisal Hussein. Opinion on if it fits your macros versus traditional bodybuilding eating every 3 hours. I get all my macros from clean, nutritious food, nutritious, whole food, but because of my work, I cannot eat every 3 hours, and sometimes I have to eat 3 larger meals to work around 9 hours straight. Am I leaving gains on the table? Very, very good question. I do think there is merit to splitting up your protein feedings to at least 4 per day. Now, if you are in a position where you only are able to eat once during a 9-hour shift, the way I would structure your actual meals would be meal number 1 before work, then I would actually have a shake somewhere in that window of time where you inevitably have to be working and you have to be available for whatever task you have to do, right? So I understand that sometimes it simply will not be possible for you to get off and be able to really have a solid meal. So I think this is where incorporating a shake would be great. I think if you are trying to maximize your protein synthesis, I do think minimum of 4 to 5 protein feedings spread across the day is essential. However, there is a lot of research that does support that meal timing is not that important. It's just all about your total intake. However, in my personal experience, both myself and clients, and 12 years of doing this as a coach, I do believe that in most cases, splitting your portions to at least 4 to 5 feedings as a minimum has the best outcomes, because especially in an off-season setting, you will struggle getting an adequate amount of food in, and the limiting factor in your protein goals or hitting your goals with your calories will be the volume of food and your digestion. And ultimately, you can only eat what you can digest. So just be mindful of that and make sure that you are still able to digest your food well, as ultimately it's not about what you can eat, it's about the digestion. Now, if it fits your macros, it's completely fine, as long as you are prioritizing whole foods over anything processed. The reason why I'm not a fan of if it fits your macros in traditional fashion, because most people use it as an excuse to just eat complete garbage, and then it's going to be a real pain trying to get solid micronutrients from your food and an adequate fiber amount. So food for thought, big man. Right, question number 2, Seth Gabriel. I appreciate your question, but it's way too long to read. And to be honest, this question I have no way to answer without actually going over your goals and breaking everything down in a little bit more detail. I mean, it's somewhat of a question that you're trying to get me to basically construct a plan for you or create a timeline for you, but I'm actually unable to do that without actually getting more of a solid reference point of where you are. So I do offer consultations as part of my service. You can actually get one through my website, MK Coaching. So if you want one, link in the description, and we can hop on a call and I can break this down for you, as your question is 3 paragraphs long. So if you want me to give you a rough idea here, bud, and I'll read out the first portion of the question, which is, as a recreational bodybuilder, much like the CEO you mentioned in an earlier video, that was me referring to a client that I work with, which is actually a CEO of a huge company. they they definitely kill it. And he never wants to compete, right? He just wants to be a bodybuilder. He wants to go through each phase like a bodybuilder, but he's got no interest in competing because as a CEO, and his company is quite well known, he doesn't really want to go on stage showing himself like that because it's just not really what a CEO would do in that type of work. So how would I suggest adjusting through each diet phase? I mean, the same way you would just being a bodybuilder would. So, you know, the rest of the question is basically trying to get me to get a proper reference point for what it needs to do. I think your timeline looks okay, but I would definitely structure it in a fashion where you're not doing an 8-week maintenance phase. That it's just a waste of 8 weeks, really. I think maintenance phases should last probably 4 to 5 weeks generally, and the only reason when you would do a maintenance phase would not be after a diet. You would do a maintenance phase mostly after a big push-up phase. Once the diet is wrapped up, getting into a very small surplus is always the most beneficial, as opposed to actually staying in maintenance, because when you do get your body fat low, trying to stay at maintenance, then you're not really making progress, you're not stepping forward. And in my opinion, if you can control your eating, transitioning back into a small surplus, and again, a very small surplus consistently daily, you will make vast amount of progress, and you can still continue getting leaner to a degree, especially initially. So that would be my go-to. So the way I would periodize it would be a 10-week diet phase, a 5 to 6 week reverse diet, and then back down into your harsher diet for your wedding. I hope that helps. Now, if you want the rest of the question done and you want insight, more than happy to jump on a consult. But a question, I can answer a question, but what you're asking for, my man, is more so under consultation umbrella. Dominik Gorecki, as you can see, I can actually still speak Polish, so I'm going to say his name correctly. Dominik Gorecki, 1504, how to structure an effective push-pull leg split to bring all muscles up. So you want an even distribution of volume. You are asking me how to structure one, and it's definitely highlighting that you are new to the channel and you haven't actually seen the videos that I've posted, because I have already included 3 templates and I've included plenty of examples on how you can actually structure your own training split with push-pull legs and a full breakdown of exercises and sets. So what you're actually looking for, how to structure an effective push-pull leg split to bring up all muscles, you want an even distribution of volume across all of your body parts, and you can use one of the templates that I already have on the channel, breaking down your push-pull leg workouts and how to structure either push-pull legs or upper lower. So check it out on the channel. Again, guys, there's a lot of gold there if you flick through. Top 5 must stack supplements from trainbygp.com, code Kuba10. Does it matter when you take each supplement, let's say on training day and rest day? Yes and no, as long as you get them in. I think that's the most important thing. However, with creatine and glutamine, I do like to take them first thing in the morning, and I do like to take them pre-workout and intra-workout. The reason why I like to take them first thing in the morning is hydration, gut health, and cognitive function. And then pre-workout and intra-workout, again, hydration and training performance benefits that both do have. Magnesium, I would have morning, midday, and pre-bed. Personally, I take magnesium with majority of the meals with my omegas. Same omegas, I would spread them out across the day. If you are ever unsure of how to take any supplements, you can always watch my videos and watch my stories on Instagram, and you will see how I personally take them. So that will give you a good insight into how you can actually utilize these supplements for yourself. So keep an eye on that. Ababi6074. I have had severe anorexia nervosa for 29 years. I have for the past 8 to 9 months been strength training and trying to reverse diet slowly. I started out at about 1,000 calories. I am very metabolically adapted. Wow. And then weight was still coming on so fast, so I dropped down to 700 calories, then still gaining. So I dropped it again to only 100 calories. Dude, at this point, I would just allow yourself to gain. I think what is happening here, bud, is I think you're probably associating body weight gain here with just gaining body fat, and that's just not the case. And look, I'm not a professional. Please, guys, do not take this advice as professional help. I think you personally need to seek professional help here, because I have seen this over and over again with many, many people as of recent, and they just literally starve themselves. And I think bodybuilding, for anyone that has got any issues like this, it is not a great move. Some people, if they can accept that they need to gain some body weight, they can do fantastically well having a past anorexia with bodybuilding. But in most cases, especially in this case, like, your body is not metabolically adapted. It's just that you are quite literally killing your metabolism, because eating 1,000 calories, you will be severely under eating. So what will happen is your body will do its best to try and store all the energy. So initially, it will take time where you need to actually have some food, and you need to gain an adequate amount of body weight to even restore some of your hormones and restore health parameters. So I would not worry about gaining some body weight. You are just going to have to focus on getting stronger, gaining some weight without gaining too much too quickly, and allowing yourself to stay in a consistent surplus. And again, a small surplus over time, you are not going to accumulate body fat. It's just not possible at that rate. The only way you will accumulate body fat quicker initially is if you are severely underfed, and that's what I'm seeing here and reading between the lines. Again, this is just my personal opinion, not professional help, guys. I think in this instance, you would benefit from getting professional help. Next question, CJH69. Do you believe in ramping someone's slow metabolism up with maintenance or higher calories before having them to attempt a fat loss phase? Oosh, no. I think your metabolism can actually upregulate as you get stronger, and with good dietary adherence. The way to upregulate your metabolism is by simply gaining more muscle tissue and getting stronger. That way, the demand for your calorie intake will be greater. Just adding food alone will not do that, because your body doesn't really work like that. Your body will need to adapt, and you will need to create a need for more calories one way or another. And the only way to do that is by getting stronger, being consistent with your diet, and actually gaining muscle mass. I have seen a lot of success with people slowly reverse dieting, and again, staying a small surplus, being able to build up the calories, but that's never the goal. I think a lot of people are under a wrong impression that if they ramp up the calories super high, they'll all of a sudden be able to diet on higher calories. It's just not how it works, unfortunately, because your calorie demand and calorie need will not change by you just eating more. However, what will happen, you'll just gain more body fat and then have more body fat to lose at the end of it as a byproduct of that. So just be mindful of that, and that will definitely be something to look out for sure. So in short, no. Create a need for more calories through getting stronger, adhering to your diet, and adding more muscle mass. Ben Urus, it's a cool name, cool YouTube name. Tips for a 17-year-old trying to be a bodybuilder and also an online coach. A bit of a reality check here for you, buddy. You're 17 years old. You probably only have been training for a year or two. Trying to be an online coach, why do you want to be an online coach? Like, what do you think online coaching is in terms of a career? Do you think it's an easy job? Do you think it's a job that allows you to have a lot of freedom? Because let me give you a reality check here, bud. I have been a full-time coach for the past almost 10 years now, right? Before I started full-time as an online coach, I PT'd in the daytime, pretty much full-time. I did roughly 30 to 35 hours per week on the gym floor, whilst I was working security in a gym, in a nightclub, and worked at a gym and in a call center at one point as well. And I did that from the age of 17 until I turned 21. And then I was actually able to transition into coaching full time. So you have to earn your stripes. At 17 years old, it's not realistic for you to be a successful online coach because you simply do not have enough experience doing this yourself, and you do not have enough experience actually working with people. I highly advise anyone that wants to actually get into coaching of some sort to actually start PTing in person. There is outliers like Meg, my wife, because she was actually a teacher before she got into coaching, so she already coached in a fashion because she actually taught at school. So the principles and the skill is transferable, right? She had years of experience doing so. So it's something that you need to accept that at 17, unfortunately, bud, you have no experience, you have no results yourself to show. You need to earn your stripes before you're able to do that. And this is me not trying to put you off, this is me just being real with you and sharing some of my own experience of how I got to where I am. Chris Cleo, how to go about switching exercises when dieting if upholding progress is key? What situation other than burnout, non-competitor, with an exercise would you switch it out? If I get to a point where this exercise is feeling dangerous, or I am noticing pain, or I am unable to hold progression or hold maintenance with that lift, that is when I would consider switching it out. And look, sometimes we want some novelty within our training program, so it's not necessarily bad switching movements. However, you have to accept that if you're chopping and changing these exercises too frequently, you are never really spending time developing the skill acquisition that is required to be able to get a lot of a lift. So personally for me, 12 to 16 weeks before I switch it out. Now, if I try an exercise and it simply doesn't feel right over 1 to 2 sessions, I just scrap it and I move on to a different one, and then I lock it in. But once an exercise is locked in, a minimum 12 to 16 weeks run on that exercise, in my opinion, is needed in order to get most of it. Now, in this past 12 months, I have almost ran the same exercises with variations of each time a stall on them entire time. So if you want to get the most out of the exercise that you're using, sticking with them is always the way to go. So yeah, only switch it out if it doesn't feel right or you are not able to uphold training performance with it. So no foods are ever a must. You can absolutely rotate your food sources, and if the prices of meat are super high, opt for something cheaper. It's not an issue. You do not need to eat red meat. Once the protein is broken down, it's all almost the same. However, I would always advise having some sort of rotation and variety within your diet. The only reason why I do like to have at least one red meat meal per day is just the micronutrient value is much higher in your red meat sources. So as long as you are still getting your micronutrients from whole foods, variety of fruit, veg, and starches, and variety of different meats and different protein sources, you are going to be good to go. You do not need to eat red meat. It's just like asking about exercise. If I need to squat, you don't need to squat. There's a variety of exercise that you can use as an alternative. The same applies with nutrition, as long as you are maintaining whole foods and the quality of your foods. So that was question for mission 1. Patrick Randall, how would you handle training if your job is 7 days, 87 hours a week, very physical, labor intensive, around 20 to 30,000 steps per day, but then I get 7 days off? Training is an issue on my 7 days off. It definitely won't be an issue on 7 days off. When you are actively working during the 7 days, what I would do is I would only train 3 times during that week. So I would do a push, pull, and a leg session in that week. Then when you do have your days off, I would then increase your training frequency to 2 days on, 1 off, training upper lower split. So the way I would structure is 3 training sessions on your days of work during that intense week of 87 hours of work, and then I would go on to upper lower on your days off. This is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, in my opinion. Dlaczego nie nagrywasz materiałów po polsku? Well, the reason why I do not film content in Polish, Grażyna, is because I do not know Polish terminology to be able to articulate what I am trying to say well enough. So I do apologize. My Polish is as good as it was when I was 11 years old when I came to UK. So I can speak fluently, I can read fluently. My writing is not the best, and my vocabulary, sadly, is very restricted because I was 11 and I didn't really finish any higher education in Polish, so I'm sorry. Campbell James, best 4-day natty split for someone with smaller but strong legs? Great question. If you have smaller but strong legs, your legs are not a strong body part, right? They need to get bigger. So I would probably look at the way you execute your lifts. If you are looking to maximize your growth on a 4-day split, I would always go with upper lower, simply because this will give you training frequency of training every body part twice per week. So for a 4-day split, I think upper lower is going to be undefeated, especially if your legs are small. I really think that will be a game changer to your overall development. Lewis Hardcastle 1. How to ensure tension in your chest during pressing movements instead of front delt. Specific form cues would be great. Please rewatch my push day video. I actually break down the cues and break down execution and tips on how you can actually improve your chest training. But if I was to give you the best cue to make sure that the tension stays in your chest during pressing, is first, make sure you keep your chest up and allow your shoulders to come into slight depression. And then I want you to really, really focus on driving your upper arm across and into your pecs. So ideally, you want to pick movements and exercises that converge. So any machine that moves from this plane of motion, allowing your upper arm to come across to mimic the function of your chest. Joshua Sand 1. How much volume do you do per muscle a week? At the moment, my training frequency is 3 on, 1 off. So it's almost like I train everything twice per week, and it varies. Some actual muscles, some body parts only get 4 sets per week. Some get 6, some get 8. It just depends on what body part it is. For example, my biceps, per week, they get between 4 to 6 sets per week of direct volume. However, you have to understand that some indirect volume will also be there from the back training. So not all volume is created equal, and secondary body parts sometimes do add volume to some of the assisting body parts, like your arms, for example. So it varies. I will do, for example, between 4 to 8 or even 10 in some cases, but then other people may need more. So it just depends. My volume is more so based off my needs at this moment in time and my recoverability. Jeremy, I really quite like the look of designs of Trained by JP clothing. I can't seem to find anyone carrying the brand here in Canada. Do you know of any company that stocks the brand around these parts? Sadly, I do not. If you want to get some Trained by JP clothing, presented, get on the website trainedbygp.com, Kuba 10, and they will actually deliver and ship worldwide. You will likely need to pay some charges from import. However, I do know that a lot of my clients and a lot of guys around the world do actually order overseas because it's worth it. So get on it. Iondrini 17, what a name. Cool guy. Having a disability and lower leg nerve impingements, right side imbalances, is it best if I add more leg days with intensity with less exercises? So what I do think that he means is simply adding more leg frequency. So what I would actually do in your case, buddy, I would probably do an upper lower split with having some arm training added to your lower days, especially if your leg training is impaired. So I would do an upper session where I would probably train a mixture of chest, back, shoulders, either bicep or tricep. The following day, if you did triceps, for example, I would start your lower day with biceps, and then I would train your legs, and then specifically have a majority of the volume in your leg training done unilaterally to be able to full send your healthy leg, healthy side, and do what you can with your weaker side, and potentially even do more volume on your weaker side in an attempt to bring it up. Jason Dingley, just starting out, not trying to become a bodybuilder, but want to recomp, build some muscle and look lean. Should I get as much body fat as possible before I go into surplus? Absolutely. I do think there is a lot of merit to getting as lean as possible before you attempt a gaining phase. The leaner you are, the more muscle you will actually gain, and the less body fat you will actually accumulate. More body fat you have on your frame, the P ratio can often get skewed. So the fatter you get, essentially, your body is going to be more primed to gain more body fat as opposed to actually gaining more muscle. So you have to understand that if you wanted to get the most out of your gaining phase, the leaner you are, the better response you will see. More insensitivity you have, more responsive you are to any of the food, and more responsive you are to the training as well. So a lean start point, in my opinion, is essential for a phase where you are actively trying to build muscle. Mario, meeting you in UF and giving you my gift was unbelievable. I've said to you that you are my English father because you don't teach just bodybuilding, but also lifestyle and workout models. Can you talk some minutes about your experience with balance, mental health, faith, working hard towards your goals from your young age until now? Oosh, that's going to be a deep one. Can you talk a little bit about balance and my experience with balance? In my younger days, I didn't party as much as my peers and my friends did. I never went on any of the lads' holidays. I always worked. And I very much stayed locked in 95% of the year. My degree of balance was I would always structure my timelines, just like I do now. I did it back in the day, where I would have an off-season phase, then a maintenance phase. During that maintenance phase, I would always plan a night out, and that would generally be a rave with some of my closest friends. So my degree of balance would be quite literally twice, maybe 3 times a year, would be a night out where I let my hair down to a degree. But even then, when I would go out, I would take my meals with me, often a blended tuna shake in my back pocket. Some of you guys that work the doors in Leeds would know that, because you used to let me in with a tuna shake in my back pocket. Into raves, even some of the guys in Manchester. So for me, the ratio of balance was always pretty skewed, because from a very, very early age, I did not have much balance. And it was always prioritizing my goals, both with my bodybuilding, my lifestyle, and the business. Because I always looked to work, save up, do as much as I can with the opportunities that I have. And I sacrificed a lot of what guys and girls did my age, such as the lads' holidays, nights out, staying up till late, all the fun stuff, the drinking, etc. I never really did that. I did some partying, yeah, but it did not involve alcohol. I can definitely put it that way. Now, mental health. I definitely had my ups and downs, especially over the past years. And one thing I've realised is, when you are busy, and I mean legit busy, when you are constantly occupying yourself, when you're constantly chasing goals, you have no time to feel down. The only times in my life where I ever felt like I was down, or even what people would probably say felt depressed in a way, was the times where I wasn't heading forward, I wasn't making progress, I wasn't busy, I wasn't working, I wasn't really keeping a great routine. I think it's definitely very much a mindset, and it's very much down to the actions that you are taking on a daily basis. If you want balance, that's completely fine, but you have to understand that if you want to get anywhere in life, there is no balance. You show me someone that's a successful CEO, there's no balance in his life. You show me a successful mother that's looking after 3 children, there's no balance in her life. She's a full-time mum, she's all in for her kids. You show me someone that's pursuing a degree at a very high level, there's no balance in their life. They're getting after it, that's all they want to do. You show me any professional athlete at the top of their game, there is no balance. They are doing everything they can to reach their goals. If you are not prepared to do that, and you want to have balance, be prepared to have mediocre results, because if you want to reach your potential in anything that you do, there is no balance. Now, the only way I've been able to get to where I am now, at my age, is having the attitude and putting the work in, and being extremely consistent. Even at times when I did not want to do the work needed to be done, always. Sammy Winchester, why don't you include lower rep ranges for easier ability to progressive over the overload, such as JP does 4 to 8 rep range on every exercise? Because it's not an easier way to progressive overload for me. And personally, I am not a fan of lower rep work. Now, I'll give you an example, right? I just did 13 plates aside on the leg press, actually today's session, and I got 10 reps with it. If I was to work in a rep range of 4 reps, that is me putting another 3 to 4 plates on top of that leg press, which is definitely going to put an enormous amount of tension and stress on my joints. Have you seen any bodybuilders, and I mean any bodybuilders at top of their game, working in rep ranges of 4 reps? Show me one person apart from JP that does that. The main reason why JP can do that is because Jordan is an anomaly, and his skill and self-awareness in training is far superior to most professional bodybuilders. So he can actually do that, but I'll be honest, I cannot. Working in that rep range for me, the stimulus to fatigue ratio isn't great. I'd feel constantly battered. I'd feel like my joints are constantly giving out on me, and I definitely would not be able to make the progress I'm making right now. So look, I know that it's a bit of a popular topic at the moment, but it's not for me, and I have not seen anyone really make substantial progress training in this fashion. And this is me working with countless of athletes and seeing guys completely transform their physique, as you can probably see on my Instagram with some of the transformations that we have had recently. The fitness vault. Is it better to track your activity throughout the day and eat back the calories you burn on a day-to-day basis, or just have set daily calorie intake to match your goals and weekly output of weight training plus cardio? I mean, it's not really possible for you to measure your calories burnt on a day-to-day basis and adjust your eating based off that, because for me personally, if you want to really maximize your off-season, all variables have to be consistent. So your daily expenditure, if possible, keep it consistent. That way, you should be able to keep a consistent level of calories going in to maintain a small calorie surplus. That way, again, you'll minimize fat gain and you will maximize your ability to grow, combining obviously the small calorie surplus with smart programming and progressive overload. Rondi, what happened to your cane Corso dogs? They were beautiful. Dogs are still alive and well. Nothing's happened. They are still alive and well. Thank you. Yes, they are beautiful. They're a nightmare, but yes, they are still alive and well. Thank you. Rich, 5890. What to do if dieting for a long time and not seeing any progress? And what might be causing this, other than not sticking to diet and calories? For example, someone has dieted for a year and the weight hasn't gone down in the last 1 to 2 months. If your weight hasn't gone down in the last 1 to 2 months, you simply need to get into a calorie deficit. As you are dieting, your body will adapt and you will need to make a change eventually to drive the deficit harder to see fat loss. If you have not lost weight, you are simply eating at maintenance. So you are no longer in a calorie deficit. Now, even if you was extremely tired, you cannot negate a calorie deficit. This is why when people have certain eating disorders, they will continue to lose weight as they simply eat less and less. You cannot cheat that. It's just science and it's basic physics. So what to do if you have had enough and you are unable to stick to your diet too well? Simply have a period of time where you spend in an active surplus. I mean, nobody should be dieting for a year straight with no active breaks. And this is where periodizing your calorie deficit comes into play, and I think has tremendous merit. So in future, instead of trying to diet for a year straight, periodize your fat loss phases, combining that with reverse diets and active phases of surplus, where you are actively trying to grow muscle tissue. Billy Shoe, any more tips on how to get past training plateaus when you cannot get more reps at weight? Loved your tip about going heavier dumbbell for a few reps before going with your training weight. Always appreciated your actual gems of knowledge. What is your goal? Is your goal getting stronger or adding muscle tissue? You have to understand that getting bigger is essential to you actually getting stronger, not the way around. So strength is a byproduct of adaptation and some neurological adaptations as well. Once you have got into a solid routine with your training, you have been at a certain lift for a long time, initially the quick gains in strength are going to be neurological adaptations. Once you have adapted neurologically, so you've got your movement pattern right, you've got your skill, etc., then any other progress after that will be down to you actually getting adapted through gaining muscle tissue. So it's not quick and easy, especially the more advanced you get, the slower you will see progression. So what my advice and best advice to you is slow, controlled progressions, micro loading, and staying consistent and patient, and making sure that you are managing fatigue well and periodizing your training with deloads, etc. How would you approach volume intensity considerations for athletes in season in certain sports? Chris Allwood. Well, this would depend on what type of sport they are in and what demand will be created on the recovery from that type of sport. So this would vary tremendously between what the actual needs are from a training standpoint. You have to understand that most athletes are not really going to be training the same way as a bodybuilder would with the same amount of volume. Most athletes will train much less volume and their training will be more suited to more strength and speed. So the volume will be adequate and based around that. And the training and exercise selection will also be based around that. It's more so going to be sport specific as opposed to based around trying to get as much muscle on the frame, because most athletes probably don't want to get bigger and cannot get bigger for their sport. GBR 5853, how do you progress weights effectively in your program? Do you increase weight if you hit your target reps on all your working sets, or only the first set, knowing you'll get less reps on the next subsequent sets? That doesn't really work like this, bud. I'm going to be honest with you. Just because you increase your weight on the first set doesn't really mean you'll get less reps on your subsequent sets. Now, I will always have my rep range set. When I use a certain load and I get to the top of my working rep range, then I will add a small load progression on top of that. If you want to know a deep dive on progressive overload, I have just dropped a video covering that. Progressive Overload 101, so give that a watch. But generally, upper body exercises will be a smaller increment of weight added, either 2 to 2.5 pounds or even up to 5 pounds. Legs, 10 to 15, 20 pounds additions if it's a leg press or a hack squat. So bigger the exercise, more load I'm using, higher the increase in load. Smaller the exercise, smaller increase in load. Super simple. I always expect a form of progression within a session. If there isn't one in an off-season setting, then the setup must be addressed, as there will always be a reason for us not to see progression. JAIRANDRD, whatever that was. Apologies, dude, but it's hard to pronounce your name, but you can see here the question, and you can see the ID here, guys. Do you believe as a coach you can give someone an off-plan meal in prep if they did not get out of shape in the off-season, and also they become mentally more fresh? What is your psychology behind off-plan eating in general? Do you believe in the mental relief they can provide? I do not believe it can provide a mental relief in a contest prep, because you are going to be hungry no matter what. And most of the time when people get a cheat meal or eat cheat meals, they focus and obsess over cheat meals as opposed to the actual goal of the prep. I have seen far more success with athletes sticking to high days and increasing the food that is of their preference that they already have within a day. I try to teach more so constructing your diet around the foods that you enjoy, predominantly still whole foods, but around foods that you can enjoy entire time. And then when high days come around, you do get to enjoy more volume of the food that you already have on your plan and enjoy as well. Now, I do incorporate off-plan meals for athletes that are in front, and we simply need to get a large influx of calories. But again, the off-plan meal that I'll implement generally will be something like sushi that's still pretty controlled and pretty moderate. I think a lot of guys that struggle with the eating habits and food relationships often want a cheat meal in prep, but generally when that happens, we then get to a point where all they think about is the next cheat meal rather than the actual goal. And I actually have seen people, as soon as they do get a taste for some food and have a cheat meal, they actually cheat on the diet much more frequently. So it's an approach that I do use and can be used, yes, but for most people, there is a better way. Mark D94. I'm currently doing FSD7 for the next 6 weeks. I've just come off 12 weeks of doing mostly compounds with little accessories for sets of 5s and 3s. Is the style of training optimal, or are you a waste of time spending so much time on strength phases? I've heard so many people say they've never done strength phases, but it's kind of worked for me up till now. I don't want to waste any more time as I'm 30. Should I stay doing hypertrophic work for X amount of weeks and then strength phase for CPL weeks less, or stay doing hypertrophy for the entire cycle time? What's your goal? Is your goal to get strong, or is your goal to get big? If your goal is to get strong, you don't really need to do strength work. Sorry, if your goal is to get strong, stick to the strength work. If your goal is to actually get big, you need to work with adequate training volume. Strength work does not provide you with adequate training volume. In my opinion, low rep work, like 3 to 5 reps, it's not really going to give you adequate stimulus to be able to see that adaptive response and see meaningful growth, because your training volume is not just your number of sets. Your training volume is also the number of reps, time and attention, etc. So in my opinion, if you want to grow and maximize your ability to grow muscle tissue, working in slightly higher rep ranges, anything between 6, maybe even 5 being the lowest, up to 20 reps is always going to be my go-to, and it's always going to be the most optimal in my eyes. Personally for me, I prefer anything to 8 to 12 reps. That's what I feel like I make the best gains, and that is what I feel like I can consistently progress my lifts with no excessive connective tissue pain or injuries. Dylan St. James, as someone who lives a highly structured lifestyle, one of my clients actually, big up Dylan, as someone who lives a highly structured lifestyle to succeed in bodybuilding and your other endeavors, how do you practice being present? Do you find yourself overwhelmed with how many tasks you need to complete throughout the day? Great question. I try to be present, but I'll be honest with you, I'm too busy to catch myself thinking I need to stay present, because when I wake up, I've got tasks to do. And as you've seen with yourself, with the level of service that I provide, You never wait for any check-ins or any replies to your phone clips, etc. So I pride myself in delivering a good service. I pride myself in my execution, both in and outside of the gym. Therefore, I do not think about being present. I often catch myself and I think about the position I'm in and how grateful I am to be able to do what I do. Because ultimately, I am living my dream. I'm doing what I've always wanted to do. I'm able to capitalize on my passion, and I'm able to work with people like yourself, which ignites that passion even more. It allows me to stay committed, allows me to stay inspired, and it drives me to be better. So staying present is not just something to think about. I instead focus on being grateful and focus on staying hungry to see continuity in progression. Now, do I ever feel overwhelmed with how many tasks I need to complete throughout the day? I used to, when my routine was quite poor and I wasn't as productive as I am now. No matter how much I have to do in a given day, I never feel overwhelmed, because from the second I wake up in the morning, I am straight to business. I do not waste time. I do not procrastinate. I pick up my work phone and I get straight to work. There is no time meditating, or there is no time deep breathing. I literally wake up, I take my morning essentials, I start hydrating, and I start my work immediately upon wake. That's when I'm most productive, and that is when I want to tackle the hardest task for my day to get them done and dusted out of the way. D squared, Edison. Is it sensible for your back-off sets to decrease in the number of reps performed compared to your first working sets? If things are common occurrence, doesn't mean that my back-off set should be substantially lighter. Yes and no. The top set and back-off set is more so a rep range metric to work from. Top set would be a heavier set, 6 to 9 reps. Back-off set would be a lighter set, 10 to 15 reps or 12 to 15 reps in the standard terms. Now, that was the method that we all used to utilize, and it simply refers to the rep range that you're using. Your top set being the heavier set, back-off set being the lighter set. That's all it is. I think people are overthinking the top set back-off method. And generally with top set and back-off sets, you have to simply pick appropriate load to hit that rep range given. I personally do not take that approach anymore for majority of sets, a majority of work. I generally like to land between 8 to 12 reps, so I pick my loading appropriately. My first working set today on leg press, so that would be my top set, was 520 kilos, right? So what I would do then is simply take 10 reps. Because I did 10 reps, I'm still within my rep range. It felt pretty comfortable, and the set lasted like a minute because my eccentrics are quite controlled. I opted to take my second set and do the same weight, and I did 8 reps. So was my back-off set in higher rep range? No. Was my back-off set still within my working rep range? Yes. So if you're using the same weight for both sets, you should see a drop-off in reps. However, if you are dropping weight and you are seeing a massive drop-off in reps, it's probably something you need to address. So hopefully that gives you an insight into what top set and back-off set is. Miso Katochic. How do we know when it's time to do a diet break, and how do we structure it? Generally, I will always structure a diet break around the time when my clients need a deload. I will also structure a diet break around the time where I know my clients are already in front. So when I plan a contest timeline, I will always create a vision for fat loss where we do it in stages. I never ever go into a contest prep and expect my clients to diet for 18 to 20 weeks. Let's just give a random number. Out of that 20-week prep, I will take into account peak week, which is 1 week off the diet. In peak week, you will not do any fat loss. That's 19 weeks already. And out of 20-week period, I will incorporate or plan for at least 2 diet breaks. 17 weeks total. So on paper, 20-week prep, yes, but out of that 20 weeks, you will likely be dieting less than 17 weeks because there will be also refeed days, etc., that will be incorporated within that period of time. Generally, when fatigue gets high, we see fat loss stall down to fatigue, and we have already been in deficit for 6 to 8 to 10 weeks, that is when it's probably appropriate to take a diet break if you have taken off enough body fat to warrant this. Hope that helps. I have done a separate video on diet breaks as well on this channel, so give it a watch. Best 5-day split besides upper lower. Push-pull legs, rest, push-pull. Or push-pull legs, rest, upper lower. Obviously you don't want upper lower, so it's fine. But best 5-day split, I would go with push-pull legs, rest, and then potentially addition of days that you specifically need. If you're already huge, you've got a huge back, huge chest, and tiny arms, maybe add in an arm day. So for me personally, most people don't need an arm day. So I would probably go with push-pull legs, rest, push, pull, or push and posterior, which is a session that I do plan for a lot of clients currently, which have strong leg development. I will generally have them do push and then a bit of a density day where they will do back and hamstrings on that day. And on that push day, it will be more like push and arms. Tips for optimizing digestion in off-season. Whole foods. Eat a varied diet coming from mostly whole foods. Eat in a relaxed environment. Do not get fat. Do not have large, uncontrolled cheat meals, which will inevitably screw your digestion and lead to high body fat accumulation. And make sure that if you do eat a higher protein diet, you are utilizing some sort of digestive enzyme like Trained by JP Digest Pharma Pro. And stay active. Some walks after each meal will definitely help. And the main, most important thing generally for an off-season is your food sources. Make sure that you eat 5 to 6 meals per day. Make sure that the volume of food isn't crazy high. You are eating adequate amount of fiber, adequate amount of fruit and veg, and you are varying both your protein, carbs, and fat sources. And again, minimizing processed food. Generally, in an off-season setting, as body fat comes up and inflammation comes up, the issues I see with digestion is generally down to inflammation and poor choices when it comes to nutrition. Pablo, my friend. Pablo, we know Pablo. Should I weigh my veg if I consume the same average quantities portions across the year independently gain cut phase? How do you know you consume the same portions and quantities if you're not weighing them? How are you measuring the quantities? If you are consistently having the same amount, for example, when you buy like a veg pot and it's got 300 grams in it and you're eating that every single day, that's completely fine. Keep that consistent. But consistency can only be achieved through somewhat of a measure. If you are not measuring what you are eating, as you get hungry, I can promise you, you will be slipping in more veg. So veg is not calorie free. I would still track it and I would still incorporate it. Personally, for me, I weigh my veg out daily and I have the same amount of veg in my off-season and in prep. It doesn't change the amount of veg that I actually eat. It stays consistent year round. So that's probably the best way to do it. Thoughts, same person, and that is the last question. Thoughts on casein in a calorie deficit. I'm not really a fan of casein in general. It's not the best quality protein. It's super thick, yes, it'll give you plenty of volume, but I'm not really a fan, I'll be honest. I think a whey isolate was far more superior when it comes to digestibility and when it comes to the quality of the protein that you're taking in. So I personally prefer a whey isolate. Guys, Q&A done. If you want your questions answered, please comment below and I will answer them in the next Q&A. Before we peace out, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you again soon, guys. We're out.